Hello students, welcome to another discussion video for ACC 111 Financial Accounting and Reporting. This is for weeks 4 and 5, specifically for Unit Learning Outcomes A. So at the end of this lesson, you're expected to first identify the 10 steps in the accounting cycle. Second is to journalize transactions. Third is to post journal entries to the ledger. And then the last one is to prepare a trial balance. Now let us discuss first the accounting cycle. So what is this accounting cycle? So this refers to a series of sequential steps or procedures performed to accomplish the accounting process. This is repeated each accounting period. So usually, ang isang accounting period would last 1 year. So if you are following calendar year, so that would mean that this accounting cycle will run from January 1 until December 31. So that is 12 months or 1 year. So these are the 10 steps in the accounting cycle. So we have step 1 is the identification of events to be recorded. Step 2 has something to do with a journal. No? In this step, transactions are recorded in the journal. Then we have step 3, wherein the journal entries are posted to the ledger. So this time we are now using ledger. So if you have noticed, I purposely colored the steps. Now this steps 1, 2, and 3 into orange for the purpose of identifying that these steps, the steps 1, 2, and 3, these are the steps in the accounting cycle which are accomplished during the period. So, ibig sabihin, during the accounting period, if there are transactions, itong steps 1, 2, and 3 can be done repeatedly. So, as long as there is a transaction. So, for step 4, it has something to do with a trial balance. So here we have to prepare the trial balance. So step 5, the preparation of worksheet, including adjusting entries. Step 6 is the preparation of financial statement, which is the output or the ultimate output of the accounting process. Then step 7, we have adjusting entries are journalized and posted. Step 8 has something to do with closing entries. I have here the closing journal entries are journalized and posted. And then for step 9, it is the preparation of the post-closing trial balance. So again, if you have noticed, steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are colored blue. So again, it has a purpose. Now why I color it blue? Because I want you to identify that these steps, 4 to 9, or the steps that are generally accomplished at the end of the period. So ibig sabihin, usually we'll be preparing trial balance at the end of the accounting cycle. So again, if you are following calendar year, ibig sabihin, magpre-prepare ka ng trial balance by December 31. But of course, if the company is preparing an interim report, ibig sabihin ng interim report ay report na prepare which is less than 1 year. So, posibleng isang buwan or posibleng quarterly yung pag-prepare. So, depende sa needs ng company. So, only in those times, in those periods, na yung end ng accounting period. So, depende kung mag-prepare ng interim report. But usually, that is done or financial statements are prepared on an annual basis na in compliance also to the regulatory requirements. So that's steps 4 until 9. Lastly, we have step 10. So step 10 refers to the reversing journal entries which are journalized and posted. So if you have noticed, this last step is colored green. Again, purposely because I want you to remember that this last step here is optional and it occurs at the beginning of the next accounting period. So meaning when you prepare journal or when you prepare reversing journal entries, you do that, no, or you record that on the first day of the next accounting period. So for example, if you ended December 31, 2019, that means that the reversing journal entries will be recorded by January 1, 2020. Okay, now so let us proceed to step 1. So the step 1 of the accounting cycle is the identification of events to be recorded. So in this particular step, ito na yung ginawa natin doon sa financial transaction worksheet na naginawa natin in the previous lesson. So wherein you have to identify the transactions which are accountable. So when you say accountable, yung dapat i-record or dapat i-record natin. So we can only say that an account or a transaction, no, is accountable if it has effects in any of the elements of the financial statement. So it could be may effect siya sa asset or may effect siya sa liability or may effect siya sa owner's equity. So if that transaction or event, no, has effects, no, meron siyang consequence, meron siyang effect doon sa any elements of the financial statements, then that transaction or event should be recorded. It is considered accountable. So we have here, no, we have 4 basic steps in analyzing the transactions. So first is we have to identify the transaction from the source documents. So you have to understand, class, that in real recording, in the real world, no, you will not be given statements as to what happened. No, unlike here in while you are still studying accounting 1, you will be given transactions, meaning transactions are in the form of statements. No? You will be told this is what happened. Now, in reality, you will not be told, no, what happened. As in, walang statement, no, or walang magsasabi sa'yo, walang written statements, no, na magsasabi sa'yo na ito yung nangyari. However, no, you will only know what happened because of the source documents. So, ano ba itong mga source documents na to? So, source documents, these are written original evidence to support the nature and amounts of the transactions, and this becomes the basis for journal entries. So, if you can still remember the principle of objectivity in accounting, no, that when we record something, it should have basis. Now, you have proof why you are recording such transaction. So, ito yung ating proof, ang source document that will really verify or confirm that indeed this transaction happened. So, some of the common source documents are the following. So, first, you have official receipts na OR. So, this signifies na meron kang na-receive na cash. Another is sales invoice, cash register tapes, bank statements, receiving reports, time tickets, specimens, and others. You have charge invoice, you have bank deposit slips, you have checks, you have purchase orders, time cards, statement of accounts. So take note again that each of these source document is telling us something, no, and that is telling us that there's transaction that had occurred. No? So because of these source documents, you will know that there was a transaction that happened. So this will be your basis of recording your transactions. This is your proof. This is your evidence that this transaction really happened or occurred. So we have here a sample, no, or mga source document samples. I have placed two samples here. Like for example, no, here this is a sales invoice. So wala siyang specific company, but take note that sales invoice will tell us of a sale transaction. Say for example, if we are the issuer na of this sales invoice, ibig sabihin, tayo yung merong sale on account na transaction. So, meron tayong sale transaction. Now, kapag naman tayo yung binigyan ng sales invoice, ibig sabihin we are the buyer then. Now, we are the buyer in that transaction. So, therefore, meron tayong purchases, no? Meron tayong acquisition. Again, if the sales invoice is given to us by the company na reflecting here na in the sales invoice. So, in that case, again, we are the buyer. But if it is our company's name that is written, na parang if this is our sales invoice, ibig sabihin we are the seller. So if this is somebody else sales invoice given to you, ibig sabihin this is a purchase transaction. So you purchase something from a supplier. So that is why they are issuing a sales invoice to you. Okay, another is the official receipts. So ito naman, this signifies that you received a cash, no? So, for example, here, if this is your receipt, if this is your OR, you issued OR. In this case, si nagpapaupa apartments, no? So, si nagpapaupa apartments, nag-issue siya ng official receipt kay BGC Corporation. So, ito, ibig sabihin si nagpapaupa apartments ay nakatanggap ng 7,600 no, from BCG Corporation. So, ito si nagpapaupa apartments will be recording cash receipts. Whereas, if you are accounting in the point of view of BGC Corporation, then you have to recognize cash disbursements. So, yan, no? Ang mga source documents will tell us what happened in that particular transaction, and then they become our basis, no, in recording our transaction. Kasi hindi pwedeng hula-hula mo lang or kung ano lang yung feel mo na i-record. It should be based on something, no? To conform to our objectivity principle that dapat meron ka talagang pagbabasihan when you record a transaction. So that's the first step in analyzing the transaction, that is to identify the transaction from the source document. So second, after identifying the transaction, no, you have to identify whether it is a sale ba, a purchase, no, or depende kung ano yung nangyari based on sa source document na meron ang company. So the second step that you have to do in analyzing the transaction is to indicate the accounts from the elements that are affected by the transaction. So, ito na yung mag-identify ka ng mga account titles which are affected with that particular transaction. So, this is the same thing that we did in the financial transaction worksheet. So, that's why I was always telling you that if you are good in analyzing or in preparing the financial transaction worksheet, then there's no reason that you will find this journalizing thing to be difficult kasi it will be easy na lang for you if you have already background or if you are very good already in making or preparing financial transaction worksheet. So the third step in analyzing transaction is to ascertain whether each account is decreased or increased by the transaction. So you have to check na, like for example, pag sinabing there was a collection of an account. So you have to identify ano ba yung mga accounts. Na second step, you have to identify ano ba yung affected na mga elements. So if that's collection, it affects your cash and your accounts receivable. So the third step is you have to ascertain kung ano ba ang nangyari sa accounts na na-identify mo in step 2. So for example, sa step 2, na-identify natin that accounts affected are cash and accounts receivable. So for example, for cash, ano bang nangyari sa cash? When you have collection, of course, your cash will increase. If you have collections, your accounts receivable will decrease. So in the fourth step, you're going to apply here the rules of debit and credit. Again, these things, no, we learned this already in our previous topic. So you have to determine whether the account are to be credited or to be debited to record for each increase or decrease. So you have to apply now the rules of debit and credit. So in our example, since our cash increases because of the collection, we will know that cash should be debited. Whereas your accounts receivable, since sabi natin in step 3, nag-decrease ang accounts receivable. So what we have to do is we have to credit the accounts receivable. Now, why do we have to credit accounts receivable? Because accounts receivable is an asset whose normal balance is debit. So since you are decreasing it, so you have to credit it to reflect that there is a decrease in your accounts receivable. I hope that one is clear. So ito yung step 1, ang pag-identify ng mga events to be recorded as well as to analyze the transactions, whether it is an accountable transaction or not. So once accountable, you have to record it following what you did or kung ano yung ginawa natin doon sa financial transaction worksheet. Which is first yung except for number 1. So wala man ito doon sa financial transaction worksheet because we are just given the transaction itself. But from steps 2, 3, and 4, we already learn this in financial transaction worksheet na topic. So I hope you can still recall the basics of analyzing the transaction. So moving forward, let us now proceed to step 2, which has something to do with journalizing. So in step 2, the transactions are recorded in the journal. Saan ba itong journal? So journal is a chronological record of the entity's transactions. So pag sinabi nating chronological, ibig sabihin, ang record na to ay nagbe-base or naka-arrange according to dates. So, ang pagka-arrange ng mga transaction, ang pagka-record ng mga transactions ay nagbabase sa date. So, that's why, for example, in a journal, you will find that January 1 transactions are recorded first before January 2 transactions because we are following a chronological order of recording transactions. So journal is considered as the book of original entry. And it has 2 types. Merong 2 types of journal. One is general journal, which is the simplest form of journal. And ito yung ating i-discuss, no, in this particular lesson. So we'll focus muna sa general journal. The other one is special journals. So special journals, we will defer this and we will just discuss this when we reach merchandising concern. So again, for now, our focus is ito munang general journal. So this is the format na, the usual format of a general journal. So ano-ano ba yung mga parts ng isang general journal? So first, meron tayong date column. So yung date column shows the date when the transactions occurred or when the transaction occurred. So again, take note that transactions are arranged by dates na in chronological order. So nagkakasunod-sunod yun. So from January 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19 until 31, as long as merong transaction in a particular date na, you record it, you arrange it by date. So that's a date column. The second one is ito, the particulars column, which indicates the accounts affected and a brief description of the transaction. So other books will label this as account titles and explanations na column. So, pwede na rin itong particulars column. So, what you're going to write here are the account titles affected and the description, no, or explanation of what happened, which is very important for us to know or to trace kung ano ba ang transaction, no? Specifically, ano yung transaction na yan for future mo na reference. Next is itong PR. Ano ba yung PR? So, PR stands for posting reference, or others will term this as folio. So, if you happen to see a general journal with F na in this column, so ang ibig sabihin nun, folio. So, this is a posting reference. So, this shows the number of an account in a ledger or the page of the general ledger where the account was posted. So, itong PR column na to or posting reference column na to, this will be filled out once you have posted this particular account in the general journal. I know, in the general ledger, no, I should say. Next. So, the last two columns here, no, is for the amounts. So, the first column, we have here the debit column. Ito yung column para sa mga amounts, no, ng mga accounts na dinebit mo. So, dyan mo siya i-record. And then, in this particular column naman, the credit column, you'll be writing, no, recording the amounts na specific for accounts which has credit or for accounts, no, which have credit na mga which are accounts which are credited. Okay, so if you have noticed, no, this amount columns here, debit and credit, so meron talaga siya mga lines. So this represents the formal talaga na pagre-record, no, using a journal paper or a journal book. So the first column here is intended for millions. So actually, class, no, when you record transactions in a formal, no, na way, you have to observe the proper placement of amounts. So just take note that the rightmost, no, column, ito siya, This is intended for the decimal. So, decimal ito. Ito for the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the 1,000s, 10,000s, 100,000s, and then millions. So, when you write or record amounts, now you have to observe the proper placement of figures. No? Dapat nandoon sila sa kanilang appropriate na placed value. Okay. So, since we have talked about journal, so let's talk about naman the recording process. So, the process of recording is known as journalizing. So, again, journalizing is the process of recording transactions to the journal in terms of debit and credit, na the effect or the in terms of debit and credit effect of the account. So, what we're using in recording transactions is what we call a journal entry. So journal entry shows all the effects of a business transaction in terms of debits and credits. So there are two types of journal entries. One is a simple journal entry, which is composed of one debit and one credit account. The other one is a compound journal entry. So it is composed of multiple debit or multiple credits, no, na accounts. So meaning, pag compound journal entry, ibig sabihin, more than one ang either debit or credit or both. So that's a compound journal entry. So this is a sample of a simple journal entry. So for example, here, si Nelosencio Desadado, no, who formed a business named Lamyun Ramen Restaurant in January 1, 2020, deposited 390,000 to My Money Bank in the name of the business. So if you are going to record the transaction, so first, diba, given that you have already the source document, for example, and then the next step is for you to identify the affected accounts. So what are the affected accounts? So first you have your cash and your capital account. So what happened to your cash? Your cash increased. So that is why here cash is being debited. Whereas your capital account is also increased. So since capital account has a normal balance of credit, so to reflect its increase, then the capital account should also be credited. Then we have here the explanation, a brief explanation of what happened. So again, this is a simple journal entry. Why? Because you only have one debit and one credit. So that's why it's called a simple journal entry. So this is naman a sample of a compound journal entry. So the transaction is acquired a service vehicle for 195,000 an account and furniture 75,000 for cash on January 2, 2020. So to record the transaction, of course you have your date, and in your particulars, you have service vehicle 195,000. So why are we debiting service vehicle? Because the entity, the business received a service vehicle, so therefore increasing your service vehicle, which is an asset account. So you have to debit the same. The same also with furniture and fixtures. This is also an asset account. So if nag-acquire ng furniture, ibig sabihin mag-i-increase ang ating furniture and fixtures na account. So we have also to debit it, 75,000. And then we credit accounts payable. Why are we crediting accounts payable? Because sabi dito, the service vehicle was acquired on account. So you have to recognize accounts payable because that is a liability. So your liability increased, so therefore it should be credited because the normal balance of accounts payable is credit. Lastly, we are going to credit our cash because the furniture was purchased no you for cash. So therefore, pag nagbayad ka ng 75,000, the cash of the entity decreased. So since cash is an asset and you want to reflect a decrease in your asset, so you have to credit the same. Then lastly, you have this explanation here sa baba. Okay? So again, this is a sample of a compound journal entry because if you have noticed, no, there are two debits here and there are also two credits here, no, in the credit side. So, pwede rin compound journal entry kung isang debit, dalawang credit, or dalawang debit, isang credit. No? So, basta more than one, yung either debit or credit, then you have to consider it as a compound journal entry na. Okay? So, I want to discuss with you the illustrative problem which is also found in your SIM. Pero meron lang akong konting revisions na ginawa in terms of the type of business that they have. No? Para service concern ito. So, let's consider this as a delivery services na lang. So, this is for Nelosencio Dagantino, who formed a business named Lamyon Delivery Services in January 2020. So during the month, the following transactions occurred. So you have here transactions from January 1 until January 31. So the requirement is you prepare journal entries using the following accounts. So you are given already the account titles that you are going to use in recording our transaction. So if this is a more formal listing of the account titles, we can term this as chart of accounts. So we can term this as chart of accounts. Although in this case, hindi siya masyadong formal in the sense that wala siyang account number. Usually kasi pag chart of accounts, meron siyang account number. But nevertheless, this becomes your guide para alam mo na, or when you analyze transactions, you can just look at the account titles given para mas madali mong ma-identify yung mga affected na accounts. Okay? Let's discuss the illustrative problem. I am now using Microsoft Excel to illustrate to you how to record transactions. So kanina, I presented to you the problem. So this is the problem. The requirement that we have to do is to prepare journal entries. So we are already given account titles and of course the transactions. So let's start. So first, when you have to record transactions in your general journal, so the first thing that you have to do, of course, is to put the year. So in this case, this is 2020. Okay. So let us now analyze the first transaction. So I have here for Nelosencio Dagantino, who formed a business named Lamyon Delivery Services on January 2020. So during the month, the following transactions occurred. So for January 1, he deposited for 70,000 amount to My Money Bank. So to record the transaction, what you have to do first is you write the year, then the date. The date is January 1. So you have Jan 1. Okay. And then in your particulars column, you have to write here the affected account titles. So what are the affected account titles for this transaction? So first is your cash, and then the other one is your equity account. So basically, the affected accounts are cash and Dagantino capital. So the amount is 470,000. So since the entity or the business received cash of 470,000, so ibig sabihin it increased na the cash of the business. So since cash increases, so what you're going to do is you have to debit cash. So debit tayo ng cash. Then the amount is 470,000. So what you're going to do is you really have to place the figures into their proper place value. So yan. Since wala namang decimal, pwede natin i-dash na lang yung ating decimal column. Pero pag meron, you have to write it here. For example, that's 25 cents. Nasulat mo yan dyan. So, in this case, wala naman. So, i-dash lang natin. Now, that's the debit side. So, for the credit side, sabi natin, affected yung Dagantino capital. So, here, take note that since this is a credit na account, we have to indent the account title or the account that is credited. So, in this case, you have to indent si Dagantino capital. So, you have here, so you have Dagantino capital. So, the amount, the same lang din. So, again, observe the proper placement of the accounts or the amounts, the place value of the amounts. So, that's your debit and credit accounts. So, the last thing that you have to do is you put a brief explanation or description of the transaction. So, this is initial investment. Okay, so that's your first transaction. So, for transaction on January 2, acquired a service vehicle for 195,000 on account and furniture of 60,000 for cash. So, for the second transaction, what you have to do is you leave one row before writing or recording the next transaction. So again, we are recording the transactions in a chronological manner. So let us now record the transaction on January 2. So for January 2, since nandito naman in this page, nakasulat naman that this is for the month of January. So, pwede na in the second transaction, you do not write anymore the month. Diretso na lang doon sa date. So, in this case, 2 tayo. Kasi ito naman nag-signify that this is still January 2. So, what are the affected accounts? So, first, you have the service vehicle. So, the amount is 195,000. So again, observe proper placement of the figures. And then the other one is furniture and fixtures. The amount is 60,000. And then for the credit side, so ano ba yung mga affected the accounts? So since the service vehicle was acquired on account, so you have a note or you have an accounts payable. Again, you have to indent your credit side. Now, do not forget indentation. So, yung amount, ganun din. 195,000. And then, another credit is your cash. So, still, you have to indent it. So, take note, this is a compound entry. So, your credit accounts or the accounts to be credited, of course, dapat pantay lang sila na naka-indent. So, the amount is 60,000. And then, lastly, your explanation of what happened. So, we have acquired or acquisition acquired service vehicle and furniture. So, just a brief explanation of what happened or description of what happened. Next, we have January 3 transaction acquired office supplies for cash. So, the amount is 65,000. So, still, we did not change page. So, what we're going to do is just record or write na the date. So, 3, that is acquired office supplies for cash. So, debit tayo ng office supplies. So, the amount is 65,000. And then, yung credit natin is cash. So, the amount again is 65,000. So, this is acquired office supplies. Yan. Okay. So, the next transactions, I have already filled it up. So, ito na yung mga journal entries for the remaining transactions. So, for January 9, I have here received 95,000 cash for delivery services rendered. So, the affected accounts are cash and delivery income. So, I have 95,000. Then for January 10, you have paid the month rental, the 30,000. So you have a debit to rental expense and credit cash now for 30,000. So paid rent for the month. So just observe the proper recording of transactions. Debit is placed here, not indented, whereas credit should be indented. No? So dapat naka-indent yung credit natin. So also, you have to bear in mind though, that if you are given the chart of accounts or the list already of the account titles to be used, then you have to be consistent, no, with those account titles. So like for example here, I am using rental expense because I based that on the accounts, no, as provided in the problem. So if there are account titles na provided, so you have to follow the account titles being given. So just to be consistent in your record keeping. So that's transaction 10. So for transaction dated 11, rendered services to Omnion Company amounting to 199,000 and received partial payment of 29,000. So this is also a transaction which requires a compound entry. So first you receive cash of 29,000 for partial payment, and then you recognize accounts receivable amounting to 170,000. And since you rendered services, then you have to recognize delivery income. So that's 199,000. For transaction 12, you have paid the 50% of the account on January 2 transaction. So the account was 195,000. So 50% of that is 97,500. So since this is payment of an account, so we are decreasing our liability. So you have to debit accounts payable. And of course, no, nagbayad tayo ng cash. So we credit cash here. So partial payment of an account in January 2. So for transaction on January 19, we have here collected 100,000 from Immune Company account. So with that, you received cash of 100,000 and then your credit accounts receivable because this is a collection of an account. So this is your explanation. Then transaction 24, there is a withdrawal of cash na amounting to 27,000 for personal use. So you debit Agantino withdrawals and credit cash for 27,000. Next, sa January 28, so you have pay the salaries for the month, 66,000. So what you're going to do is you have to debit salaries expense and credit cash of 66,000 na same amount. So paid salaries for the month. Then your 30 transaction pay utilities in the amount of 29,600. So this is it. No? So you have to debit utilities expense and credit cash. So the amount is 29,600. So paid utilities for the month. So the last transaction is received bill from Adverb Company amounting to 36,500 for advertising. So what you have to do is you have to record first the advertising expense, that's a debit, 36,500, and credit accrued expenses, so 36,500. So accrued expense or accrued expenses account is more applicable na account because this is an expense which is already incurred but not yet paid. So accrued expense account would be more appropriate na to use since it's also given in the chart of accounts. So that's it. No? So for journal entries, no, recording transactions in a formal journal entry, all you have to remember is you have to observe the proper formatting of the your journal entry. So you already learned how to analyze a transaction in the previous lesson. So in this particular lesson, what we're doing is just to formalize our recording. No? Pina-formalize lang natin yung pag-record natin ng transactions in the form of journal entry using a journal. After recording the transactions, we are now ready to proceed to the next step, which is step 3. The journal entries are posted to the ledger. So take note, we are after the journal, we are now moving to the ledger. So what is a ledger? Ledger is a grouping of the entity's account, and it is considered as the book of final entry. So if the journal is the book of original entry, ledger is the book of final entry. So this is the point wherein you are going to group, you're going to classify, you're going to sort accounts which are similar. So meaning you have to group, classify, sort all of the transactions, example involving cash. So you have to put them in one record. No, in this case, the record we're referring to is a ledger. Actually, there are two kinds of ledgers. So one is the general ledger, which is used to classify and summarize transactions and to prepare data for basic financial statements. So this is the ledger that we will be talking in this lesson. So the other one is a subsidiary ledger. So subsidiary ledger is not yet discussed in this topic nor in this lesson, but just for the purpose of knowing now that there is another kind of ledger. So what is this subsidiary ledger? So it is a record that shows detailed transactions of a specific customer or supplier. Kumbaga class, no? Para siyang listahan kung ano yung mga transactions ng isang specific na customer or supplier. So, customer na may pagkakautang sa atin or supplier kung saan meron tayong utang. So, in short, yung subsidiary ledger will be a more detailed record, no, pertaining to a specific customer or supplier. So, again, for the purpose of this lesson, we will be discussing only the general ledger. So, ito yung ating concern in this lesson, yung general ledger. So, we have classification of accounts in the general ledger. So, accounts are classified into two. One, accounts which are considered balance sheet, permanent, or real accounts. Or, the other one is income statement or temporary or nominal accounts. So, ano bang kaibahan ng dalawang classifications na ito? So, pag sinabing balance sheet, permanent, or real accounts, these are accounts that accumulates and are forwarded in the next accounting period. So, ito yung mga accounts that will accumulate over time. No? So, pagkatapos ng isang accounting period, yung balanse ng mga accounts na to ay ma-forward sa next na accounting period. So, ang examples ng mga tinatawag na balance sheet or permanent or real accounts are the assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. So, these are permanent or real account in the sense that you are going to accumulate them, no, from one accounting period to another. So, it will be forwarded to another accounting period. So, for this type of accounts, no, you will be reporting as of, no, as of a certain period of time. So, parang may cut-off siya. Like, for example, if you want to know how much is your cash, for example, as of January 31, so, yan, you can get information kung magkano ba yung cash in a particular date or as of a particular date. So, in that case, January 31. So, you can parang if you want to get the balance, no, or magkano na yung balance for a specific account. So, you can do that. On the other hand, the income statement or temporary or nominal accounts, these are accounts that are closed every accounting period. So, examples niya ay revenue, expenses, withdrawals. So, these are considered as temporary or nominal accounts. So, every end of the accounting period, these accounts are being closed. So, pag sinabi natin closed in accounting, ibig sabihin nun, we have to zero out their balance. So, ultimately, itong mga accounts na to, itong mga temporary or nominal accounts na to, maka-close ito doon sa mga permanent or real accounts. So, kung ang balance sheet or permanent or real accounts, ang balance niya ay as of a particular period, ito namang mga income statement or temporary or nominal accounts, ang kanilang balance ay for a certain period of time. So, for example, pag sinabi mo ang balanse ng revenue, pagdating ng January 31 or for the month ended January 31 ay, for example, 50,000. Ibig sabihin nun na ang 50,000 na yan ay accumulated amount from January 1 until January 31 only. O, pag sinabi niyang this is the revenue for the quarter ending, for example, March 31, ibig sabihin that that amount is accumulated from January 1 until March 31, which is again 1 quarter. So, ganun yung income statement or temporary or nominal account. So, you are accumulating the figure or the amount, you're accumulating the account for a certain period of time. So, that is in contrast to the balance sheet or permanent or real accounts wherein as of siya. So, it is accumulated over time, from one accounting period to another. In addition, after the end of the accounting cycle, ito mga income statement, temporary or nominal accounts, again, ang magiging balance nila ay 0. So, that is after preparing the closing entries. So, that is why as of December 31, after the closing entries are journalized and posted, so yung mga revenue, yung mga expense, yung mga withdrawal accounts na to, ang balance nila ay 0 because we are going to close them into their real accounts. So that, pagdating ng next accounting period, which is magsa-start na ng January 1, assuming that you're following calendar year, so ibig sabihin, yung revenue, yung expense, yung withdrawal accounts ay 0 balance na. So, ready na for the next accounting cycle. Ready to accumulate new transactions for the new accounting period. I hope you get that. If you did not understand it very clearly, then you can raise it to me during our Zoom session. Let us now proceed to the formats of general ledger. So, we have here 2 formats of a general ledger. So, the first format, this is the most commonly used, or this is commonly used especially for manual accounting. So, in this particular ledger, this is a resemblance of a T account. If you have noticed, it's a T account because yan, letter T siya, the horizontal line, and then this one is the vertical line. So, resembling a T account. So, in this format, you have, of course, the account title, and then the account number. Tapos, we have the date, the particulars, folio for the posting reference, or the journal reference. Then, here in this column, you're going to write the amount ng account na naka-debit. So, dito mo isusulat yung mga debit na mga transactions involving, of course, cash. So, in the next naman na column, ito naman yung credits na column. So, same lang din. Merang date, may particulars, may folio, or journal reference, and yung column para sa amount na pertaining to the credit account. Okay, so that's the first format of the general ledger. So, again, this is commonly used for manual accounting or for those following manual accounting. Next is ito, this is the other format. in the general ledger. So, ganun din, merong account title, merong account number, then your date, your particulars, your folio or your journal reference. Then, ito, notice this. Now, observe that here, merong tatlong columns for the amount. So, one is for the debit, the other is for the credit, and then the last column is for the balance. So, in this particular format, now this is applicable kapag ang gamit natin ay computerized. So, for example, if you're using spreadsheet ba or you're using a program, usually ganito yung tsura ng general ledger. So, here, of course, alam natin date, no? Particulars kung ano yung transaction na yan. Then, debit side, dito na nilalagay yung mga amounts na mga naka-debit na transaction. Dito naman yung mga amounts na naka-credit na transaction. And then the balance. So, ibig sabihin in this particular format, you will have a running balance. No? So, makikita mo kung magkano na yung balance, no? Account balance for the specific na account. Unlike the other format wherein you can only compute, no? Pag gusto mo mag-compute ng account balance, what you have to do is you have to add all the debits muna, then add all the credits, and then you offset them. So, kung saan yung mas malaking amount, yun yung side kung saan mo ilalagay yung balance or yung tinatawag natin na account balance. So, for our discussion, we will be using the account format muna. So, itong the account ang gagamitin natin because we are following manual accounting system. So, we have here posting. So, this is what we do, no, when you are going to record your transactions in, or you're going to, not record, but to transfer, your transactions which are recorded in the journal to the ledger. So that's posting. Others will also term it as classifying or sorting. Kasi we are sorting accounts, mga similar accounts na we sort it in one record that we term as ledger. So, these are the steps in posting. So, first, you transfer the date of the transaction. So, what you're going to do is you just really copy. You copy the date na nandoon sa iyong journal. So, what we're going to do here, when you do posting, what you're going to do is you start with the journal, and then each of the transactions in the journal will be transferred to the ledger. So first, you transfer the date of the transaction. Then second, you transfer the page number of the journal to the journal reference, or ang tawag natin dito sa ating form kanina yung folio. And then, transfer the debit journal figure to the debit ledger figure. So, meaning, kapag doon sa journal mo naka-debit, so you just have to transfer that amount in a particular account under the debit column. O if that is a credit naman na figure in your journal, then you have to place it in the credit side of your ledger. So, last, yung number 4, you enter the account number in the posting reference column to the account number of the account in the ledger. So, later I'll just illustrate this to you. So, this is something to do with the posting reference found in your journal na, di ba kanina, hindi pa natin siya fill in or wala pa siyang blank pa siya. So, dito natin siya i-fill in kapag nagpo-post na tayo. So, kaya ang tawag sa kanya ay posting reference because we were trying to remind ourselves, that Etong transaction na ito, we posted it in this particular ledger. So, yun yung purpose ng posting reference saka yung journal or journal reference or folio. Kasi gusto nating ma-remind ang ating mga sarili for tracing purposes. Now that this, for example, this journal was posted in this particular ledger. And at the same time, yung mga record na nasa ledger, nire-refer din natin kung saan galing, no? What specific journal, say page ng journal, kung saan siya galing para merong cross-referencing, no? Sa mga transactions na pinost sa ledger na galing sa journal. So, another important thing, no, that you have to know when we talk about posting is itong chart of accounts or even, no, when we are recording transactions. So, ano ba itong chart of accounts? This is a listing of all accounts and their account number in the ledger. So, they are arranged, or this is arranged in the financial statement order that follows the order. Assets first, then liabilities, then owner's equity, income, and expenses. So, the account should be numbered in flexible manner to permit indexing and cross-referencing. So, take note yung pag-number naman ng mga accounts ay magdedepende sa company. So, except for specific na mga companies or entities like banks, mga cooperatives, kasi meron yan silang specific na chart of accounts. For banks, na merong chart of accounts galing talaga sa BSP. And for cooperative, merong specific chart of accounts na galing talaga sa CDA. But for others, no, they can just craft their own chart of accounts. So, depending on their, the nature of their business. So, yung mga account titles din nakasama sa chart of accounts, magdedepende rin yan, no, sa company. So, except for those companies na meron talagang prescribed na chart of accounts na dapat gamitin. This is a sample of chart of accounts. So, we have here, no, as you can see, yung balance sheet accounts niya, assets, na label niya as 100. This is the usual, no, na numbering. So, your cash daw is 110. Accounts receivable, 112. 114 yung merchandise inventory. 115 yung store supplies. And so on. Liabilities, you have 200 naman. Nag-start ng 2. So, you'll be alerted or, diba, parang you will know that, ay, liability pala ito kasi nag-start ng number 2. So, yan. So, owner's equity, meron kang 300. For income accounts, you have 400, no, or revenues. Ito, the sample here is for merchandising concern. If you have noticed, na kasi meron siyang sales, meron siyang sales returns, meron siyang sales discount. Pero anyway, if this is a service concern, so most probably your revenue account here would be service income. Then, 500 for expenses. So, ito, applicable for merchandising, yung cost of merchandise sold. And then, the other types of expenses. Then, we have other expense na interest expense. Okay? So, again, this is not really the chart of accounts can differ from one company to another company except for those companies na meron talagang prescribed na chart of accounts as I've mentioned kanina. So, let us continue the illustrative problem that we had kanina, no? Para there's just a continuity of this problem. No? So, let's proceed, no, from journalizing to posting naman the journal entries that we had kanina to the general ledger. So let us transfer to the Microsoft Excel. So we are now in the general ledger. So as you can see here, I have prepared the general ledger for each of the account. So I based the accounts or the account titles on the given accounts na in the problem. So except that I just added account number so that we can also have an illustration about the referencing, no? Yung posting reference tsaka yung sa journal reference or folio. So we have here first cash. So take note that each account title will have its own general ledger. So all of the account titles, each of them, no, will have one general ledger. So I have here for cash. Then for accounts receivable. So the account numbers here, I just presumed or I just assumed, no? I just assigned account numbers to each of the account. Next, we have the office supplies. Then we have the service vehicle. We have furniture and fixtures. We have accounts payable. We have accrued expenses. We have Dagantino capital. We have Dagantino withdrawals. We have delivery income. We have rental expense, salaries expense, utilities expense, and advertising expense. I would also like to mention that I am using the T account format as mentioned kanina, no? Kasi we are following manual accounting system. So we will just use the T account, and it's also the commonly used, no, na format kapag manual nga ang manual accounting yung ini-implement. Okay, so let us start. So to start posting, what you have to do is you go first, no, to your general journal. Okay, so this is our general journal, yung ating mga transactions na ni-record kanina. So what we're going to do is, no, per transaction, ito per journal entry, you just have to transfer them in your general ledger. So we'll start with January 1 transaction. So first they have cash. So cash here is debited at 470,000. So what you're going to do is to just transfer this to your general ledger under your cash na account. Okay, so here you just have to put the date. So the transaction was January 1. So this is initial investment. Okay. So your folio or your posting your journal reference, you can write here the page number. So suppose, no, that it's page 1. So J journal -1 that represents the page. Okay. So the amount is 470,000. So you just write it na here in the debit side. So still, that's for the centavos. So wala naman tayong centavo. Okay? So that's for the first account, no, in your general journal. So the next account was Dagantino capital. So you'll just have to look for Dagantino capital in your ledgers. So dito, so take note, this was credited in the general journal. So, therefore, dito natin ilagay sa credit side. Okay, so this is initial investment. Okay, so that's journal, page 1. So, you have 470,000. So, simple as that na. Yung posting actually is the easiest part no, in the accounting cycle or the easiest step in the accounting cycle, because what you have to do is just have really to transfer what you have recorded in the journal to the ledger. I made some adjustments para makita natin agad yung general journal na ginawa natin kanina. So, tapos na tayo nag-post sa January 1 na transaction. Let us now proceed to January 2 transaction. So, here, the service vehicle is debited at 195,000. So, dito, napin lang natin yung service vehicle. Lagyan natin ng month, of course, because this is the first entry in this particular column and in this particular account. So, that's January 2. So, this is acquisition. So, folio, again, we are just assuming that all of these are still in the page 1 of the journal. So, the amount is 195. 100. 95,000. Hindi makita yung mga amount yan. So, that's 195,000. Okay? Then, the next account is furniture and fixtures. So, dito naman tayo, January 2, again. So, yan, medyo tedious siya, pero, again, this is the easiest na step in the accounting cycle, because you just have to copy. You just have to transfer what you have already analyzed in the general journal. Yan. And then for your credit side, you have accounts payable and cash. So, unahin na lang natin yung cash kasi mas malapit dito. So, this time we have a credit na. So, we have here January 2, a credit na acquisition of furniture. So, you have 60,000. Adjust lang natin. Okay. So, yan, 60,000. By the way, before I forgot, yung kanina, balikan lang muna natin yung kanina. So, yung first natin na journal entry na pinost natin dito sa general ledger. So, we have already placed a journal folio or journal reference. Now, before I forget, so let us go back to the general journal, because we also have to put or place the posting reference in your general journal. So, since we posted it to the cash account and the account number is 110, so you can write in your posting reference in the general journal this 110. So meaning you have posted the general journal to the 110 account in your general ledger, so, which is referring to cash. So going back to our general journal, so here now we have to write a posting reference. So we can just write here 110. Again, this is the account number of your cash in your general ledger. For Agantino Capital, that's 310. Okay? So, again, ibig sabihin nito that you posted this particular account to the ledger with the number 310. So for a service vehicle, this is 140. Furniture and fixtures is 150. Accounts payable is 210 and cash is 110. So that's how you fill in your posting reference in your general journal. So going back to the general ledger, I have already posted the last account for the January 2 transaction. So, yung sa accounts payable, yan, 105,000 or 195,000. So, the next transaction, we have office supplies. So, again, all you have to do is you look for the account. So here, office supplies. So the amount is 65,000. So this is January 3. So this is acquisition. Then you have, again, assuming that it is still page 1. So that's 65,000. And then your credit, you have cash. So let's put it in the credit side. So take note dito, meron namang account na, or meron namang month prior to this entry. So you just have to write na lang the date. So this is office supplies. So the amount is 65,000. Okay? So that's how you do posting. So until na matapos mo lahat yung mga transactions or yung mga journal entries mo. So next, we have September 9 transaction. So we have cash debit na 95,000. So that's January 9. That is delivery income. So again, assuming na page 1, they have 95,000. And then your credit is, of course, delivery income. So hanapin lang natin, nasa baba. Ito. So that's January 9. So this is delivery. income. So assuming that still page 1. So that's 95,000. Okay. So next would be itong transaction sa 10. So we have rental expense. So nasa baba pa. Yan, that's a debit. So that's January 10. Rent for the month. So assuming na page 1 again. So the amount is $30,000. Okay. And then yung partner niya ay nun sa cash. Naka-credit. So the amount is 30,000. So class, if you've noticed, diba, ang ginawa ko dito, nilagyan ko talaga siya ng columns per place value just for the purpose of showing you how to do it manually. But of course, if you're using Excel, pwede nang hindi na, no, kapag computerized, you're using Excel, pwede nang wala na ito mga columns na to para later when we do our account balance, mas madali siya, no, kasi you can use lang the formula. But again, the purpose why I'm doing this is to show you, to illustrate to you how to do it manually. Na you have really to observe na the proper place value of the amounts in posting it in your ledger as well as in your journal. So for transaction 11, you have here, there is receipt of cash. So for delivery income din. So assuming that this is already page 2. So you have 29,000. And then another one is your accounts receivable. So lagyan lang natin ng amount, ay ng date. January 11. So this is delivery income. So this is page 2 already. So the amount is 170,000. Okay. Then you have delivery income. So assuming it's page 2. So you have 199,000. Then we proceed to transaction 12, wherein there is payment of accounts payable. So start tayo sa accounts payable. Hanapin lang natin. So our accounts payable is in here. So since there is payment, magde-debit tayo. Based also on your general journal. So this is 11 payment. Or should I say partial payment? So assuming it's page 2. So you have 97,500. Yan. Then yung partner niya, ang cash. So mag-credit tayo ng cash. Partial payment. So, assuming this is 1, this is also page 1, this is page 2 already. So you have 97,500. Okay? So, yun lang, no? You're just to transfer your journal entries in your general journal to your general ledger. Then, in transaction 19, we have collection or partial collection. So, there is a receipt of cash. So, debit tayo ng cash. Transfer lang natin dito sa debit side ng ledger. So, this is partial collection. So, assuming this is also page 2. So, that's 100,000. Yan. Ang partner niya ay accounts receivable. So, dito, January 19. So, that is partial collection. So, that's 100,000. Then, for 24, there is withdrawal. So, hanapin lang natin yung, hindi ko pala nalagyan ng page. Yan. So, for withdrawal, hanapin lang natin the Gantino withdrawal sa baba. So, that's a debit. So, that's January 24. So, this is withdrawal. So J2. So, that's 27,000. Okay? So, yung partner niya, of course, yung cash, naka-credit. So, dito tayo. That's 24. Withdrawal. J2. It's 27,000. Okay, so we're down to our last 3 transactions. So we have for January 28, we have salaries expense. So, hanapin lang natin yung salaries na sa baba. So, that's January 28. So, this is salaries. So, assuming this is page 3 already. So, the amount is 66,000. Then, yung partner niya, of course, yung cash. Credit tayo, 28. salaries. So, assuming that it's page 3. So, you have 66,000. Yan. Okay? So, last two. So, yung pang January 30, you have utilities expense. So, nasa baba kasi expense siya. So, the amount is, that's January 30. Up. So, you have utilities for the month. So, that's J3, 29,600. Yan. So, yung partner niya, of course, nasa taas yung cash. Credit tayo ng 29,600 na cash. So, 30, that's utilities. So, that's J3, assuming that that's page 3. So, you have 29,600. Okay. So, last transaction is advertising expense and accrued expenses. So, hanapin lang natin advertising. I have here the last account. So, that's January 31. Up. So, this is advertising. So, yan, I just placed the name of the advertising company. And then, the amount is 36,500. Okay, last would be the accrued expenses. Okay. Dito, nasa credit side. So, January 31. So, this is for the advertising. Verco. So, you have 36,500. Okay, so there you go. Natapos na nating i-post lahat ng mga transactions. So, the next thing that you have to do is, pwede na tayong gumawa ng trial balance. We are now in step 4, which is the preparation of the trial balance. So, ano ba yung trial balance? It is a list of all accounts with the respective debit or credit balances. It is prepared to verify the equality of debits and credits in the ledger at the end of each accounting period or at any time postings are updated. It is important because it serves as a control device that helps minimize accounting errors. So when the totals are equal, the trial balance is said to be in balance, which provides an interim proof of the accuracy of the records, but it does not signify the absence of error. So it is possible that the trial balance is in balance, yet meron pa ring error. But most of the errors in recording can be detected na with trial balance. How do we prepare trial balance? So first that you have to do is you make a list, no? So you list all of the account titles in numerical order. So yung mga account numbers nila, so based sa account numbers nila. And usually naman yung account numbers na yon ay in order na rin, no? From assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, tsaka expenses. So after that you have the list of the account titles, then the next thing to do is to compute or you get the account balance of each account from the ledger. So you enter the debit balances of the ledger to the debit column of the trial balance and the credit balances in the ledger to the credit column of the trial balance. So later we will discuss how to compute, no, the account balance. Then after that, if you have already the account balance and you have posted that to the respective columns, no, whether debit or credit, so the next thing to do is you have to add the debit columns as well as the credit columns. And the last thing to do is to compare the total. And we have not to ensure, no, that, or I mean, it is expected, you're expecting that the total debits and the total credits are equal. Because if it is not equal, then ibig sabihin, you have to repeat the process because you missed something. So, merong error na posibleng nangyari in recording the transactions. So, how do we compute, no, the balance of an account, or we term as account balance? So, at the end of the accounting period, the balance of each account must be determined to be able to prepare a trial balance. So, first, no, that you have to do is you put, no, all of the debits and credits. So, in putting, we mean add. In accounting, you add all the debits and then you add all the credits of a certain account. Now, if the sum of an account's debit is greater than the sum of its credits, then the account has a debit balance. So, meaning whichever is greater or kung saan yung mas malaking amount, yun yung side na magpre-prevail. So, for example, your cash, the debit, no, na total ay 100,000. Tapos yung credit total niya ay 40,000. So, when you offset them, 100,000 minus 40,000. So, your account balance is 60,000. So, since debit is greater than credit, then 60,000 will have a debit balance. Okay? So, on the other hand, if the sum of its credit is greater, na mas malaki naman yung credit, then that account has a credit balance. So, following the steps of the preparation ng trial balance, so we have here the list of all the account titles. So, I assigned account numbers not to the specific accounts for the purpose of illustrating it. So we have here, now I already prepared a trial balance, at least the format of it, except that wala pa tayong amounts. So ito yung step 1, that you make a list of all of the accounts na meron ang company. So, we also base this on the account titles na given na sa problem. So, take note na in preparing a trial balance, of course, pinakauna sa lahat naman ng report sa accounting, unang-una dapat meron kang heading. Yung heading, the first line should be the name of the company. The second line is the name of the report, and of course the third line will be for the date, no, the date of this report. So we have here the account number. Again, I just assign this to the account titles. And then the account titles. Then we have the debit column here and the credit column. So sa baba, nandito na yung total. So later we will just fill this out based on sa mga account balances na ating mako-compute. So for step 2, sabi doon, you have to compute na for the account balance. So how do you do that? So first, you have to get the total. You put your debits and your credits. So in this case, your debits, ang total niya ay 694,000. So, yan. Okay? Whereas, ang credits, ang total niya, lahat-lahat na to, ang total niya ay 375,100. Okay? So, you have now the total debits and the total credits. Now, as you can see, the total debits is greater than the total credits. So, ibig sabihin, itong cash na ito ay merong debit na account balance. So, magkano ba? So, what you have to do is you just have to offset the amounts in your debit side, the total of your debits against the total of your credits. So, in this case, the balance is 318,900. So, yan yung balanse. So, I just have to bold it and then i-double rule natin to signify that this is our account. This is our balance. Or, account balance. Or balance na lang. Yan. So, yun yung balance natin sa cash. So, the same thing that you have to do in the other accounts. So, for example, for accounts receivable, so, dalawa lang man yung transactions. So, 170,000 and 100,000. So, still you have to offset. So, 170 minus 100,000, of course, ang balanse mo ay 70,000. So, as easy as that. So, double rule natin to signify na ito na ang ating balance. So, still under the debit siya kasi mas malaki yung debit compared sa credit. Okay? So, next is the office supply. Siya lang man isa. So, ito na yung balance. Double rule na lang natin. So, yan yung balance niya. Yan. Then, for service vehicle, the same lang din. Siya lang man isa. Double rule na lang natin. The same also with furnitures. So, no need anymore of computing kasi ito na yun, diretso na. Then your accounts payable, take note. So your credit side is greater than your debit side. So it will have a debit or it will have a credit balance. So that's 97,500. Kasi 50% man yung binayaran. So, ito yung ating account balance. Okay? So, ito yung balance natin. Then, your accrued expense, siya lang man isa. So, bold na lang natin. Tsaka, double rule. And then, ano pa? Your Agantino capital, also, siya lang isa. So, atin lang double rule. Withdrawals, isang amount lang din to. So, i-bold lang natin, tsaka double rule. So, yun sa mano-mano, what you can do is just to place double rule, no? Kasi, di mo naman mabobold yung ililista mo. Okay? For the delivery income, the total of this is 294,000. So, walang debit side. So, ito na yung ating balance. So, double rule lang natin. Then, your rental expense, siya lang isa. So, bold lang. Then, double rule. As well as your salaries expense. So, you have here, bold, tsaka double rule. Then, your utilities expense, ganun din. And lastly, your advertising expense. Okay. So, meron na tayong mga account balances ng ating mga accounts. So, the next thing that you have to do is punta tayo doon sa ating trial balance. Okay. So, ito yung ating trial balance. So, what we have to do is we just try to look for the open account or open balances in your general ledger. So, we'll start with cash. So, in our general ledger, we have balance of 319,900. So, we'll just transfer this in our debit side or debit column. Yan. Next is your accounts receivable. So, yung balance dito ng accounts receivable ay 70,000. So, you just have to copy that under the debit side kasi naka-debit dito sa ating accounts receivable sa general ledger. So, that's 70,000. Okay? Then, your office supplies amounts to 65,000, if I'm not mistaken. Tama. Then, our service vehicle is 195,000. Tapos, ang ating furniture and fixtures ay 60,000. Okay? Now, for our accounts payable, yung balance natin ay naka-credit. Take note, no? So, that's 97,500. So, transfer natin dito sa credit side, 97,500. Then, we have accrued expense, which is 36,500. Then, Agantino capital, check natin sa ledger. So, ang balance niya ay 470,000. So, credit pa rin. Tapos, meron tayong withdrawals na 27,000. So, take note, this is debit. Tapos, your delivery income, magkano ba? So, puntahan natin doon sa general ledger. So, So, yan, that's a total of 294,000. And then, if I remember it right, rental expense is 30,000. Tapos, yung salaries, tingnan natin. Salaries expense ay 66,000. Utilities expense ay 29,600. Lastly, your advertising expense amounts to 36,500. So, naka-debit tayo dyan. Okay? So, ito na yung ating mga balances. So, the next thing that you have to do is you have to put again, you add all of the debits. So, that's the amount. And all of the credits. You add in. Okay? So, after that, you compare the two amounts. So, in this case, our trial balance is in balance. No? Kasi, balance, the same yung amount ng total debits tsaka ng total credits, which is 898,000. So, that's it. No? Nabuo na natin yung ating trial balance. So, also, we are done with steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the accounting cycle. So, I hope you understand, you're able to follow through the steps or the process from the identification of the transaction to journalizing, to posting, and to the preparation of trial balance. Okay, so this is the last part of this very lengthy discussion video. So we are now to discuss the types of errors in trial balance. So as you know, that trial balance, ginagamit natin siya to check possible accounting errors in recording the transactions. So, if the trial balance is in balance, so medyo kampante tayo na baka wala tayong error. But just take note that a trial balance being in balance doesn't necessarily mean na wala nang error na na-commit during the recording process. But at least, at some point, parang masasabi mo na hindi gaanong kalaki or ka-material, yung error na na-commit mo. Kasi pag hindi equal yung trial balance, parang matataranta ka, Kasi you know really that if this is not equal, you know that it is really a signal na there is an error. Now, you committed error in recording your transaction. So, what are the possible errors in trial balance, which is not balance? So, hindi equal yung trial balance mo. So, first is, you could have committed error in posting a transaction to the ledger. So, it could be that the amount posted to the ledger is incorrect. So, you have posted an incorrect amount in the ledger. So, example, imbis na 1,000 lang ang ipopost mo, ginagawa mong 10,000. So, in that case, of course, you'll be committing error already in recording. Second, 1.2, a debit entry posted to the credit side of the ledger and vice versa. So, example, dapat ang accounts payable should have been debited kasi nagbayad ka ng utang. Kaso lang, tama yung sa journal mo, kaso lang pagdating nun sa posting, na mali, ang enter sa ledger. So, imbis kay nasa debit, nalagay mo sa credit. So, that can cause your trial balance to be not balanced. And then, 1.3, no, yung omission of debit or credit posting. So, yun. May isang debit na amount na hindi mo na post. So, of course, it will really cause the trial balance to be not balanced. Say, for example, the transaction is nagkolekta ng accounts receivable. So, you have posted the cash debit side, but you have omitted, no, you failed to post the credit side na accounts receivable. So, that can cause your trial balance to be not balanced. Okay, next, number 2. So, there could also be error in determining the account balances. So, namali ka pag compute sa account balance. So, 2.1, there could be incorrect computation of the account balances. So, error in calculation. 2.2, a balance incorrectly posted to the wrong column in the trial balance. So, ito, number 2.2, tama na ang pagka-compute mo ng account balance, kaso lang, na-post mo, nalagay mo sa maling column in the trial balance. Like, for example, yung accounts receivable mo na dapat nasa debit, nalagay mo doon sa credit side. So, again, it will cause your trial balance not to be balanced. Then, number 3, there could be error in preparing the trial balance. So, 3.1, there could be incorrect computation in the columns in the trial balance. So, sometimes, sa kahaba-haba ng kinumpute mo sa calculator, mga hinaba-haba ng paggamit mo ng calculator, of course, baka you have missed something. So, for example, isang 0, hindi mo na pindot, so kulang na. So, that could be a cause of mali sa computation mo sa isang column. So, 3.2, there could also be incorrect recording, an account balance on the trial balance. So, mali ka pag sulat sa amount dito sa trial balance. Like, for example, the amount should have been 10,000 lang, pero you have recorded it in your trial balance at 100,000. So, that's really a big difference now. So, hindi talaga magbabalanse ang trial balance mo. So, 3.3, a balance is entered into an incorrect column or omitted entirely. So, it's either na mali ang balanse, mali pagka-post doon sa trial balance, incorrect column, or hindi mo talaga na post. So, example, merong expense account na hindi mo na sali doon sa lista. So, it can cause your trial balance not to be balanced. Next is locating errors in trial balance. So, example, hindi balanse yung trial balance mo. How do we locate the error in the most efficient way? So, first thing to do is you add back the amounts in the column in an opposite direction. So, for example, from top to bottom ka, before, then you have to add naman the amounts from bottom to top naman. Para baka may na-missed out ka. So, you have to recompute, add back the amounts. Second, if you do number 1 and it is correctly added but still out of balance, so mali pa rin, tama naman yung computations mo, pero hindi pa rin balanse. Then, ito yung kanyang suggestion, 2.1. You get the discrepancy. So, ibig sabihin, you offset, you deduct the debit and the credit balances, you get the difference. If the difference is divisible by 9, Now, what are the numbers which are divisible by 9? So, for example, if the amount is 27, if the difference is 27, that's divisible by 9. Or if that's 36, that's divisible by 9. So, if the difference is divisible by 9, then this suggests that there is a transposition error. So, ano itong transposition error? It is an error that occur when reversing the order of the number or sliding, sliding error. An error occur when moving decimal points from one place to another. So, dalawa ito. One is transposition error, yung nagkambyo ang amount. Like, for example, imbis kay 56,000, pag-post mo, nahimo siyang 65,000. Or the other one is sliding error. So this is a second type of error, no? So an error that occur when moving decimal points from one place to another. So imbis kay 100 lang, nahimo siyang 1,000, for example. So mamali na jud siya. So that's a sliding error. So 2.2, the error is done when the account balances amount is recorded in the opposite column. Then the amount will be doubled in the discrepancy of the trial balance. So it is advisable to get the difference of the discrepancy and divide it by 2 or half of the difference and search for the exact or for the amount exactly the same with the answer. So, ibig sabihin, no, posible din na ang error ay because of recording an amount in the opposite column. Like, for example, yung accounts receivable na dapat nasa debit na 10,000, na-post mo siya doon sa credit, which is 10,000. So, again, it will cause discrepancy, no? Or hindi magiging balance yung trial balance mo. So, again, pag ganun, what you have to do is you get the difference, no? You get the difference of the total debits and your total credits. And then after that, yung difference, i-divide mo by 2, no? Divide mo by 2, and after that, so for example, ang difference ay 20,000. So, you divide it by 2. So, you have 10,000. So, after dividing it by 2, so hanapin mo, no, doon sa iyong trial balance, ang account with the exact amount na 10,000. Kasi posible, yun yung account na namali ka pagbutang sa column. So, imbis kay sa debit, nabutang nimo sa credit, or imbis kay sa credit, nabutang nimo sa debit. Next, number 3. So, another thing that you have to do is you compare the amount of the account as per ledger to the amounts transferred in the trial balance. So, maybe the discrepancy is caused by an omission of account balances. So, ibig sabihin, no, if you have noticed, if you have observed in the suggestions, you start muna your, start locating the error muna in the trial balance. So, kung wala talaga doon, wala sa computation, wala sa posting, so, now you go back to your ledger. So, ang gagawin mo, no, you have to check all of the accounts in your ledger and trace it to your trial balance. So, i-check mo lahat ba ng merong open balances doon sa general ledger, na-post mo ba doon sa trial balance? Kasi baka meron kang na-omit, na meron kang account, no, na meron sanang open balance pero hindi mo nasali doon sa iyong trial balance. So, after that, kung wala pa rin, kompleto naman lahat, you recompute the balance in each account in the ledger. So, this one is recomputation na baka na mali kapag compute sa imong account balance. So, kung wala gihapon, so you have to trace all of the postings from the journal entries to the ledger. Kasi baka doon pa nag-start yung error. So, you'll go back to the general journal. No? So, you look at the journal entries. Then, you check the posting, no, kung it was posted ba correctly to your ledger for verification. So, you put check mark, meaning you have to tick, no, mag-tick mark ka. So, on each of the posted journal entries, para alam mo na ito posted na. And then, after posting or after checking, after ticking all of those journals or journal entries na na-post na, you look after for the unchecked items. No, baka yun yung mga items na hindi mo na-post doon sa general ledger. So, it could be the error amount. So, maybe there is error of omission. So, hindi mo na-post doon sa ledger ang iyong journal. Or, namali ka pag-post. No? Namali ni mo ang post. Say, for example, imbis kayo sa debit side, tambutang ni mo sa credit side. So, yun yung mga ways, no? Efficient way of locating error. So, you do not go immediately to your journal or general journal, but you do it, no, step by step. First, you scrutinize muna, you locate the error, doon muna sa trial balance. Kung wala talaga, you go back to your ledger. And then, kung wala pa rin, you go back again to your general journal. So, pabalik siya, no? So, do not go directly to the general journal because you might be wasting much of your time. So, you have to do it in an efficient na manner. So, yun yung proper sequence sa pag-locate ng error sa trial balance. Now, what if balanse naman yung trial balance? So, sabi natin, hindi naman assurance, no, na kapag balanse yung trial balance natin ay wala ng error or meaning tama na dyan kayo ka, no? So, dili na siya posible pa, no, nga even if your trial balance is in balance, still there are possible errors, no, that you have committed in recording. So, ano kaya yung mga error, no, na hindi makakakos ng pagka-disbalanse ng trial balance, but still, of course, error pa rin. So, meaning, there is still misstatement in your trial balance. So, first, no, it could be a failure to record or post a transaction. So, ibig sabihin, isang buong transaction, hindi mo na record sa general journal. So, that's an error of omission, no? Completely omitted yung isang transaction. So, kahit balance yung trial balance mo, kasi merong transaction na hindi na record, meaning it's not complete. So, mali pa rin yung pag-record mo. Mali pa rin yung mga balanse na na-report mo. Or, pwede rin na hindi siya nakapag-post ng buong transaction. So, ibig sabihin, nandoon na sa general journal, kaso lang hindi niya na-post yung buong journal entry sa general ledger. So, second, recording the same transactions more than once. Ito naman, nanobra po, no? Kaganina, wala naka-record, karon nanobra og record. So, kung sobra, of course, that's already overstatement, no, or understatement. Depende kung anong effect ng transaction na yun sa isang account. But the thing is, there is really error. Number 3, recording an entry but with the same erroneous debit and credit amounts. Okay, mali. So, ibig sabihin, tama naman yung journal entry mo, kaso lang mali yung amount. Like yung sinasabi ko na, what if yung actual transaction is 10,000 lang, pero na-record mo at 100,000. So, of course, mali na talaga yan. And since yung debit mo tsaka yung credit na amounts mo ay the same, hindi talaga yan magkakos ng pagka-disbalance ng trial balance. So, balance pa rin yung trial balance, pero mali, no? Mali yung mga balances mo. Then, lastly, posting a part of a transaction correctly as a debit or credit but to the wrong accounts. So, mali, no? Pagka-post sa account. So, tama na post siya sa debit or credit, pero mali lang ang account nga iyahang na post san. So, example, your journal entry is payment of accounts payable. So, supposedly, nag-debit ka ng accounts payable, nag-credit ka ng cash. Now, ang ginawa mo, nag-debit ka nga ng amount, kaso lang, hindi mo siya na-post sa accounts payable, kundi doon mo siya na-post sa accounts receivable. So, balanse, kasi tama naman, dapat mag-debit ka ng accounts payable, kaso nga lang, na-debit mo sa accounts receivable. So, ibig sabihin, balanse yung trial balance mo, pero yung accounts payable ay mali yung amount, tsaka yung accounts receivable, mali din yung amount na na-report mo. Okay? So, that's the end of the presentation. No? Very lengthy presentation. So, I hope you learned something from this video. Kasi medyo mahaba-haba itong video na to. So, if you have concerns, so please feel free, no, to just raise it during our Zoom meeting. So, thank you again for listening and God bless sa lahat.